You were never meant to stay small. I know, they told you otherwise. They told you to be quiet, to be grateful, to take up less space, to shrink yourself into something digestible, something convenient. And you listened. Of course you listened. You were young and the world was loud, and their voices were the only ones you knew. But here is what they never told you, what they couldn't tell you, because it would have undone everything they built around you. You were not born to fit inside their architecture. You were born to outgrow it. Every wall they placed around you, a confession. Every rule designed to keep you still, evidence, not of your weakness, but of your terrifying, unbearable potential. Oh, they saw it. Do not think for a moment that they didn't. They saw it in the way you asked questions that had no safe answers. They saw it in the way you looked at the horizon like it owed you something, and it frightened them, not because you were dangerous, but because you were possible. And possibility, my dear, is the most ungovernable thing in the universe. So they did what frightened people have always done. They made smallness sound like virtue. They called it humility. They called it humility. They called it knowing your place. And you, brilliant, aching, magnificent you believed them. You folded yourself into corners and called it peace. You silenced your own thunder and called it growth. But the body knows what the mind refuses to admit. You felt it, didn't you? That tightness in your chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with containment. That restlessness at 3 a.m. when the world was quiet enough for your real voice to slip through the cracks. That was not anxiety, little wildfire. That was you, pressing against the edges of a life that was never built to hold you. And now you are here. And something in you already knows what I'm about to say. Has always known it, the way the sea knows the moon before it feels the pull. You were never meant to stay small. And you won't. Let us begin with the truth that sits at the bottom of everything, the truth that is so simple it is almost offensive. You did not choose to be small. Smallness was chosen for you. It was decided before you had language, before you had the vocabulary to protest, before you even understood that protest was an option. Someone, a parent, a teacher, a system, a culture, a god dressed up as tradition, looked at you and decided what you were allowed to become. And you, little ember, you had no say. Think about that. Really sit with it. The version of yourself that you have been carrying around, the one that hesitates before speaking, the one that apologizes for existing too loudly, the one that dims their light in rooms full of people who have never once dimmed theirs, that version was assigned to you. It was not discovered. It was not earned. It was not the result of some deep, honest excavation of your soul. It was a costume. It was a cage with a door painted to look like a wall, and you wore it so long you forgot it wasn't your skin. I need you to hear this, and I need you to hear it without flinching. The smallness you carry is not yours. It never was. It is borrowed pain. It is inherited limitation. It is the echo of someone else's fear reverberating through your bones, and you have been vibrating at their frequency for so long that you mistook it for your own heartbeat. But it is not your heartbeat. Your heartbeat is the thing underneath, the deep, persistent drumming that wakes you at odd hours, that makes you restless in rooms where everyone else seems content, that whispers, "This is not enough, this is not enough, this is not enough," until you want to scream. That is not dissatisfaction. That is your blueprint. That is the original design trying to assert itself against years, decades of revision. You were drafted by someone who had never seen your full dimensions, and you have been living inside that draft ever since. Now, I know what you were thinking. You were thinking, but what if I really am small? What if the limitations are real? What if I have tried, truly tried, and this is simply all there is? And I want to be tender with you here, because I know that thought is not laziness. It is not cowardice. It is exhaustion. It is the particular weariness of someone who has been pushing against invisible walls for so long that they have started to believe the walls are load-bearing, that if they push any harder, the whole structure will collapse and bury them. But hear me, the structure should collapse. That is the point. The structure was never yours. It was built to house someone else's idea of you, someone else's comforts, someone else's safety, someone else's inability to handle what you might become if you were left uncontained. The collapse you fear is not destruction, it is demolition. There is a difference. Destruction is random, chaotic, purposeless. Demolition is intentional. Demolition is the first act of architecture. You are not falling apart. You are taking yourself apart so you can be rebuilt, this time by your own hands, to your own specifications, with your own name carved into the cornerstone. And yes, it will be terrifying. I will not lie to you about that. Growth that matters is always terrifying, because real growth requires you to abandon the version of yourself that knew how to survive the old world. You must become a stranger to your own coping mechanisms. You must look at the tools that kept you alive and say, thank you, but I am building something different now, and you are not precise enough for this work. The caterpillar does not simply sprout wings. Inside the chrysalis, it dissolves, it becomes liquid, it becomes nothing recognizable. And if you were to open that chrysalis mid-transformation, if you were to peer inside expecting progress, expecting a half caterpillar, half butterfly, you would find only chaos. Only soup. Only what looks to any reasonable observer like total annihilation. But it is not annihilation. It is the most radical act of becoming that nature has ever engineered. And you, my dear, are mid-dissolution. You are in the soup. And I know it feels like dying, but I promise you, it is the opposite. Let me tell you about the archaeology of smallness, because it has layers, and you need to understand them if you are ever going to dig yourself out. The first layer is the most obvious. The things they said to you directly. You're too much. You're too loud. You're too sensitive. You're too ambitious. Who do you think you are? These are the surface wounds, the ones you can point to, the ones you can name in therapy, the ones that make people nod sympathetically and say, that must have been hard. And it was hard. But these are not the wounds that keep you small. These are the wounds you can see, which means they are the wounds you can treat. The second layer is subtler, and it is where most people get trapped. The things they didn't say, the praise they withheld, the dreams they never asked about, the silence that met your achievements, not cruelty, not criticism, just nothing. The vast echoing nothing of being unseen by the people whose seeing would have meant everything. This layer is harder to excavate because there is no villain in it. There is no moment you can point to and say, there, that is where it happened. It is an absence, and absences do not leave fingerprints. They leave only the hollow feeling of reaching for something that was never extended. But the third layer, the deepest one, the one that runs beneath everything, is the most devastating of all. It is not what they said or didn't say. It is what you told yourself in response. It is the narrative you built in the dark, alone, with no tools and no guidance, trying to make sense of why the world seemed to have no room for everything you were. I must be too much. I must need to be less. If I were quieter, they would love me. If I were smaller, they would stay. If I wanted less, I would hurt less. I would hurt less. I would hurt less. I would hurt. If I expected nothing, I could never be disappointed. These are the stories you wrote when you were too young to know you were writing them, and they are brilliant in their way, the way all survival mechanisms are brilliant. They kept you alive. They kept you functioning. They allowed you to move through a world that was not built for your dimensions without being crushed by it. But survival is not living. And the strategies that kept you alive at 7, at 12, at 17 are now the very things that are keeping you from being alive at 25, at 30, at 40, at whatever age you are when these words find you. The armor you forged in childhood has become the prison of your adulthood. And the lock, my darling, is on the inside. It always was. I want to talk about the word enough because it has done more damage than almost any other word in the language, and it has done it so quietly that most people don't even notice the wreckage. You have spent your life orbiting this word. Am I enough? Am I smart enough? Talented enough? Thin enough? Strong enough? Good enough? And the question itself, the very act of asking it, is a trap, because it presupposes that enough is a destination. that there is some threshold you can cross, some line you can step over, after which the question stops, after which you arrive, after which you can finally, mercifully, rest. But enough is not a destination, it is not a place. It is not a point on a map that you can navigate toward. Enough is a word that other people invented to describe the amount of you they could comfortably handle. It is a boundary of their capacity, not a measurement of your worth. When someone tells you that you are too much, they are not diagnosing you. They are confessing. They are telling you in the only language they have that they are too small to hold you. And that is not your problem. Read that again. Their inability to hold you is not your problem. It is not your deficit. It is not evidence that you need to be less. It is evidence that you need to be less. It is evidence that you need to find bigger hands, wider arms, deeper waters, people and places and purposes that do not ask you to fold yourself into fractions just so you can fit through their door. You have been trying to pour the ocean into a teacup and then blaming yourself for the flood. Stop. The ocean is not the problem. The teacup is the problem. And you, my darling, are the ocean. You always were. Now, let us talk about fear. Because fear is the mortar between every brick of your smallness, and if you do not understand it, you will keep rebuilding the walls even as you tear them down. There are two kinds of fear, and the difference between them is everything. The first kind is biological. It is the fear that floods your body when you are in genuine danger, the racing heart, the tunnel vision, the primal animal certainty that something is trying to kill you. This fear is a gift. It is millions of years of evolution screaming, move, survive, live. You should listen to this fear. It is almost always right. The second kind is psychological. It is the fear that floods your body when you are on the edge of something meaningful. The racing heart, the tunnel vision, the primal animal certainty that something is about to change forever. This fear is also a gift, but it is a gift you have been unwrapping wrong. Because this fear feels identical to the first kind. The body does not distinguish between I am about to be eaten and I am about to become someone new. The physiological response is the same. Cortisol, adrenaline, the ancient machinery of fight or flight spinning up like a jet engine. And because you cannot tell the difference in your body, you have been interpreting the second kind of fear as the first. Every time you stood on the threshold of expansion, every time you are about to speak up, reach out, take the leap, make the change, become the thing you have always suspected you could be, your body screamed danger, and you listened. You retreated. You made yourself small again, because small felt safe, and safe felt like survival, and survival was the only metric you had ever been taught to measure yourself by. But you are not surviving anymore. You survived. Past tense. You made it. You are here, alive, reading these words, which means the part of your story that required survival strategies is over. The emergency is done. The sirens have stopped. And now you are standing in the silence, still braced for impact, still flinching at shadows, still running from a fire that burned out years ago. The fear you feel when you think about becoming bigger, louder, more visible, more yourself. That fear is not warning you of danger. It is announcing proximity to your own transformation. It is the trembling of the chrysalis just before it breaks. It is not a stop sign. It is a signal flare. And every time you retreat from it, you are not saving yourself. You are betraying yourself. You are choosing the known suffering of smallness over the unknown magnificence of your own becoming. And I understand why. Known suffering is comfortable in the way that a prison cell becomes comfortable after enough years. You know the dimensions. You know the walls. You know exactly how many steps it takes to cross from one side to the other. There is a perverse peace in that. But you were not built for peace. You were built for fire. I want to tell you something about permission, because you are waiting for it, and it is never coming. You are waiting for someone, a parent, a partner, a mentor, the universe itself, to look at you and say, yes, now, go. You are ready, you are allowed, you have earned the right to be everything you are. And you have been waiting so patiently, so obediently, like a good child standing at the edge of the water, watching everyone else swim, waiting for the lifeguard to wave you in. But the lifeguard is not coming, not because they are cruel, but because they do not exist. There is no authority out there who holds the key to your expansion. There is no council, no committee, no cosmic admissions board that reviews your application for bigness and stamps it approved. The door is not locked. There is no door. There is only the space where a door used to be, and the only thing standing in that doorway is the ghost of every person who ever made you feel like you needed their blessing to breathe. Permission is a lie. It is the most elegant lie that small makers have ever told because it keeps you compliant without requiring force. They do not need to chain you if they can convince you that the key is in someone else's pocket. They do not need to lock the gate if they can make you believe you are not allowed through it without an escort. And you believed it. You believed it because you were taught to believe it before you had the capacity for doubt. You were taught that authority was external, that someone else knew better, saw further, understood more. And maybe for a time that was even true. When you were very young, when you were genuinely helpless, when the world was a vast and bewildering machinery that you did not yet have the tools to navigate, it made sense to defer. It made sense to wait. It made sense to look to older, bigger, more certain people and follow their lead. But you are not that child anymore. You are not helpless. You are not bewildered. You have been navigating this machinery for years, badly sometimes, beautifully other times, and you have earned through sheer endurance, if nothing else, the right to steer, the right to choose your own direction, the right to stand at the edge of the water and walk in without waiting for anyone to tell you it is safe, because it is not safe. It was never going to be safe. Growth is not safe. Becoming is not safe. Setting fire to the small, suffocating life you have been living and building something new from the ashes is not safe. But it is necessary, and necessity has never asked for permission. Let us talk about the people who will not understand, because they will come. As surely as the tide, as predictably as rain, they will come. The ones who look at your expansion and feel it as a personal insult. The ones who loved you best when you were broken, because your brokenness made them feel whole. The ones who celebrated your smallness because it never threatened theirs. The ones who call your growth selfishness, your boundaries coldness, your refusal to shrink arrogance. They will say, "You've changed," and they will be right. You have changed. That is the point. That is the entire, magnificent, terrifying point. You have changed because the old version of you was dying. Not dramatically, not in a single catastrophic moment, but slowly, daily, in the thousand small surrenders that made up your average Tuesday. You were dying of politeness. You were dying of accommodation. You were dying of the chronic soul-crushing effort of being perpetually digestible for people who never once made themselves digestible for you. So yes, you have changed. And the people who cannot handle that change will tell you it is a problem. They will dress their discomfort in the language of concern. "I'm worried about you. You're not yourself. Are you sure about this?" And I want you to listen carefully to what they are actually saying, because the translation is this: the version of you that I knew how to control is disappearing, and I don't know how to relate to what is replacing it. That is their crisis, not yours. You are not obligated to remain a version of yourself that other people find manageable. You are not contractually bound to the personality you developed under duress. You are not required to keep playing a role that was written for you by someone who never bothered to ask what kind of story you wanted to live. And here is the part that will hurt, and I will not pretend it won't. Some of them will leave. Some of the people you love most, the people you thought would be there forever, the people whose absence you cannot currently imagine, some of them will look at the person you are becoming and decide they prefer the person you were, and they will go. Quietly sometimes, loudly other times, but they will go. Let them. This is not cruelty. This is ecology. In nature, when an organism outgrows its environment, one of two things happens. The environment expands to accommodate the growth, or the organism moves to a new environment. There is no third option. There is no version of this where you become everything you are meant to be and everything stays exactly the same. Growth is displacement. Growth is rearrangement. Growth is the tectonic shifting of your entire inner landscape, and some structures will not survive the quake. But the ones that do, the relationships that can absorb your expansion, the people who look at your growth and feel not threatened but inspired, those are the ones that were always real. Those are the load-bearing walls. Everything else was decoration. Beautiful, familiar decoration, but decoration nonetheless. And you can mourn it. You should mourn it. Grief is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that something mattered. But you cannot let your grief become an anchor. You cannot let the fear of losing what is behind you prevent you from reaching what is in front of you. The people who are meant for your next chapter will recognize you when you get there. They will not need you to explain yourself. They will not need you to apologize for your volume, your ambition, your hunger, your light. They will simply make room. And the room they make will feel like nothing you have ever known, because it will be the first room in your life that was built to your actual dimensions. Now, I want to address something that lives in you like a splinter, something you have never quite been able to name, and it is this: the guilt of wanting more. Because you do want more. You want more than you have been told you deserve, more than the modest, reasonable, realistic life that was prescribed for you by people who had long since given up on their own wanting. And that wanting, that deep, hungry, almost feral wanting, fills you with shame, because somewhere along the way you were taught that wanting itself was the problem. That desire was dangerous, that the safe path was the path of diminished expectation. Don't get your hopes up. Don't aim too high. Be realistic. Be grateful for what you have. And gratitude is important. I will not dismiss it. The ability to appreciate what is, even as you reach for what could be, is one of the great balancing acts of a well-lived life. But gratitude has been weaponized against you. It has been used not as a practice of presence, but as a leash. Every time you expressed a desire for something beyond your current circumstances, someone tugged that leash and said, "But look at everything you already have. Isn't that enough?" And there is that word again, enough. The word designed to stop you mid-reach. The word that mistakes stillness for contentment and silence for peace. Your wanting is not ingratitude. Your wanting is intelligence. It is the deepest part of you recognizing the distance between where you are and where you belong, and refusing to pretend that distance does not exist. It is your soul's navigation system, and it has been recalculating for years, trying to reroute you back to the path you were always meant to be on, while you keep making U-turns because someone told you the destination was unrealistic. Stop making U-turns. The hunger you feel is not a flaw. It is a compass, and it has been pointing in the same direction your entire life, toward expansion, toward expression, toward the full, unedited, terrifyingly authentic version of yourself that you have been keeping locked in the basement of your own psyche, like a secret you are ashamed to tell. But it is not a secret. It is not shameful. It is the most honest thing about you. And it is tired, so tired of being hidden. Let me tell you what happens when you stop hiding. It does not happen all at once. There is no single moment of revelation, no cinematic scene where the music swells and you suddenly shed your old self like a coat and walk into the sunrise, transformed. That is the myth. The reality is slower, stranger, and far more beautiful. What happens is this: you start saying yes to things that scare you and no to things that drain you, and at first the ratio is terrible. You say yes once for every 50 times you retreat. You say no once for every 100 times you capitulate. But the ratio changes. Slowly, imperceptibly, like the turning of a season, the ratio changes. And one day you realize you said the true thing in a room full of people who expected the polite thing, and the ceiling did not collapse, and the ground did not open, and you are still here, still breathing, still alive, and something inside you has shifted. Not broken, not healed, but shifted, like a bone resetting after a long dislocation. And then it happens again, and again, and each time the fear is a little quieter, and the voice is a little louder, and the space you take up is a little more honestly, unapologetically yours. You start making choices that confuse the people who knew the old you. You leave the job that was suffocating you. You end the relationship that required you to be half of yourself. You start the project that everyone said was impractical. You go to the place. You say the thing. You wear the clothes, sing the song, write the words, make the call, take the chance. And each choice is a small demolition, a single brick removed from the wall you have been living behind. And the light that comes through the gap is blinding and beautiful and absolutely, horrifyingly real. This is what it looks like from the inside. It looks like chaos. It looks like a mess. It looks like a mess. It looks like everything is falling apart. And from the outside, to the people who preferred you contained, it looks even worse. It looks like a crisis. It looks like you are losing your mind. But you are not losing your mind. You are finding it for the first time. You are finding it for the first time. You are finding the mind that existed before it was colonized by other people's expectations. You are finding the thoughts you were never allowed to think, the desires you were never allowed to name, the version of yourself that has been banging on the walls of your conformity for years, screaming, "Let me out, let me out," and you are finally opening the door. I want to be honest with you about what lives on the other side of that door, because I will not romanticize this. I will not hand you a postcard of paradise and pretend the journey there is a gentle stroll through wild flowers. The other side of smallness is not comfort. The other side of smallness is exposure. When you are small, you are hidden. When you are big, when you take up your full space, when you speak at your full volume, when you live at your full wattage, you are visible. And visibility means vulnerability. It means that people can see you, really see you. Not the curated version, not the palatable version, not the version that has been sanded down and painted over and packaged for public consumption, but the real, raw, unfinished, magnificent mess of you. And that is terrifying, because when you were small, you could hide behind the smallness. If they rejected you, they weren't really rejecting you. They were rejecting the costume, the performance, the carefully constructed version that you had designed specifically to be rejected without it costing you anything real. Your smallness was a shield. It kept the wounds superficial. It ensured that no rejection could ever reach the core of you, because the core of you was buried so deep that even you had forgotten where you put it. But when you are big, when you are real, rejection reaches bone. Criticism touches nerve. Failure is not abstract. It is intimate, personal, devastating. And there is no hiding from it. There is no retreating back into the costume because the costume no longer fits. You have outgrown it. You have outgrown the small life, the small voice, the small expectations. And there is no going back, just as there is no unpicking a butterfly and stuffing it back into the chrysalis. This is the price of expansion, and it is real, and it is steep. You must be willing to be seen, not partially, not conditionally, not in the carefully curated way that social performance allows. You must be willing to stand in full light and let the world look at you and know that some of what it sees, it will not like. Some of what it sees, it will misunderstand. Some of what it sees, it will try to diminish or dismiss or destroy, because the world has a long and documented history of being unkind to things it cannot categorize. But here is what I know that the world does not. You have already survived worse. The worst thing that could happen to you in your bigness, rejection, failure, humiliation, loss, you have already experienced all of it in your smallness. You have already been rejected by people you loved. You have already failed at things you cared about. You have already failed at things you cared about. You have already been humiliated, lost, broken, and brought to your knees. And you survived. You are here, which means the fear of what might happen if you expand is less powerful than the proof of what you have already endured while contracted. You are not risking destruction by getting bigger. You are risking discomfort. And discomfort, my dear, is not the enemy of a good life. It is the admission fee. Let me tell you about the mythology of readiness, because it is another lie, and it is one of the most effective lies ever told. You are waiting to be ready. You are waiting for the day when you wake up and the fear is gone. The doubt is quiet. The path is clear. And every part of you is aligned in perfect, harmonious certainty that now is the time. You are waiting for readiness to feel like confidence, like clarity, like the absence of trembling. That day is never coming. Readiness does not feel like confidence. Readiness feels like nausea. Readiness feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down and wanting to throw up and jump at the same time. Readiness is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of something bigger than fear. A desire so deep, a calling so persistent, a hunger so unrelenting that it finally, mercifully outweighs the terror of answering it. You will never feel ready. You will only ever feel called. And the call will come not as a gentle whisper, but as a roar, the accumulated voice of every silenced impulse, every swallowed dream, every abandoned version of yourself that you locked away for safekeeping, all of them rising at once, all of them demanding to be heard, all of them saying the same thing, now, now, now. And when that moment comes, when the roar becomes louder than the fear, you will not step gracefully into your new life. You will stumble. You will stagger. You will crawl if you have to, dragging every doubt and insecurity behind you like a wedding train made of lead. And it will not be pretty, and it will not be elegant, and it will not look anything like the transformation montages you have seen in films, where the music swells and the lighting is perfect and the protagonist emerges, gleaming and whole into their destiny. It will look like a mess. It will look like a mess. It will look like you. And that is exactly how it should look. I want to speak now to the specific, peculiar cruelty of being told you are too much, because this, more than anything, is the blade that has been used to carve you into a smaller shape, and it has been wielded so often and so casually that you may not even recognize it as a wound anymore. You're too emotional, too intense, too sensitive, too loud, too needy, too ambitious, too much. Count the number of times you have heard some version of this. Count the number of times you adjusted yourself in response, dialed something down, turned something off, tucked something away. Count the number of times you looked at the full, blazing spectrum of who you are and decided to present only the colors that wouldn't overwhelm anyone. Count the number of times you were the sun and chose to be a lamp because someone told you the sun was too bright for the room. Now ask yourself, whose room was it? Because that is the question no one ever asks. When someone tells you that you are too much, the immediate reflexive response is to interrogate yourself. What do I need to change? How do I need to shrink? What part of me is the problem? But the right question, the revolutionary question, is not what is wrong with me. The right question is what is wrong with this room? A bonfire is not too much for a field. A symphony is not too much for a concert hall. A thunderstorm is not too much for the open sky. Things are only too much when they are placed in containers that are too small to hold them. And you, my darling, have been placed in very, very small containers. Not because you belong there, but because the people holding the containers did not have anything bigger. And I say this not to vilify them, not entirely, because many of them were doing their best with what they had. Many of them were themselves contained, themselves diminished, themselves living in rooms too small for their own natures, and they could not offer you a space they did not have. The teacher who told you to quiet down was perhaps herself silenced as a child. The parent who told you to want less had perhaps never been allowed to want at all. The partner who called you too intense was perhaps terrified of their own intensity, and your refusal to suppress yours was a mirror they could not bear to look into. Hurt people shrink people. That is the cycle. That is the inheritance. And understanding it is important, because understanding is what allows you to break the chain without breaking yourself. You can recognize that the people who made you small were themselves made small, and you can hold compassion for their limitations, and you can still refuse to perpetuate them. Both things can be true. The wound can be understandable and still unacceptable. The hand that struck you can have been trembling, and the blow can still have left a mark. You do not owe your smallness to anyone's backstory. You do not owe your smallness to anyone's inability to handle your sound. You are allowed to be the full orchestra, even if the only room available is a closet. Let the walls shake, let the neighbors complain, let the whole inadequate structure tremble under the weight of your volume. That is not your problem. That is architecture's problem, and architecture's problem, and architecture's problem, and architecture, unlike your spirit, can be rebuilt. Let me tell you what I know about the moment, the exact, precise, identifiable moment when everything begins to shift. It is not when you make the big decision. It is not when you quit the job, leave the relationship, start the business, move to the city, make the declaration. Those are consequences. Those are the visible, external manifestations of a change that has already happened internally, invisibly, in the quiet chambers of your deepest self. The moment everything shifts is the moment you stop arguing with your own knowing. You know. You have always known. You know what you want. You know what you need. You know what is killing you and what would save you. You know which relationships are nourishing you and which are draining you. You know which path is yours and which path was assigned to you. You know. You have known for years, maybe decades, but you have been arguing with that knowing because the knowing is inconvenient. The knowing demands change, and change is expensive. The knowing requires courage, and courage is terrifying. The knowing asks you to disappoint people you love, and disappointing people you love feels like a kind of death, a social death, a relational death, a death of the self that was built entirely to be pleasing. So you argue, you rationalize, you make lists of pros and cons as if the geography of your soul can be navigated with spreadsheets. You seek advice from people who will tell you what you want to hear, not the true thing, but the comfortable thing. You read books and listen to podcasts and attend seminars, searching not for answers but for permission to keep ignoring the answer you already have. And all the while, the knowing sits in you, patient and implacable, like a seed planted in concrete. It does not care about your arguments. It does not care about your timelines. It does not care about your fear. It only knows what it knows, and it will keep pressing upward, cracking through whatever you place on top of it, until you either listen or spend the rest of your life maintaining a surface that is perpetually, exhaustingly fractured. The moment everything shifts is the moment you stop pouring concrete and start pulling up the pavement. The moment you say, not with confidence but with surrender, I know, I have always known, and I am done pretending I don't. That is not a moment of strength. It is a moment of exhaustion, so complete that pretending is no longer possible. And that is fine. You do not need to come to your truth through bravery. You can come to it through sheer, blessed fatigue. The door opens the same way regardless of whether you stride through it or collapse through it. Just get through it. Now let us talk about the work. Because there is work. And I would be lying. I would be just another voice selling you comfortable fictions if I told you that awareness alone was enough. That knowing you were meant to be bigger would by itself make you bigger. That the revelation would do the heavy lifting. It will not. Revelation is the match. Work is the fire, and the work is daily. The work is not glamorous. The work is not the stuff of inspirational montages. The work is waking up every single morning and choosing actively, deliberately, with full knowledge of how much easier it would be to choose otherwise, to take up space, to speak the true thing instead of the safe thing, to pursue the terrifying goal instead of the comfortable one. To sit with the discomfort of expansion instead of retreating back into the anesthetic numbness of your former life. The work is saying no to things that diminish you, even when those things are wrapped in love, especially when they are wrapped in love, because love is the most effective wrapper there is. People will hand you smallness like a gift and expect you to be grateful, and the work is recognizing the gift for what it is, a constraint disguised as an offering, and handing it back. Gently, if possible, firmly, always. The work is tolerating the loneliness of growth, because there will be loneliness. There will be stretches of time, days, weeks, sometimes longer, where the old world has fallen away and the new world has not yet materialized, and you are suspended in the between, the neither here nor there of transformation, and it will feel like you are the only person on earth who has ever been this lost. You are not. But I know you will feel that way, and the work is staying in that loneliness without filling it, without rushing into the first available relationship, the first available distraction, the first available version of smallness that will take you back just to have somewhere to put the ache. The work is becoming comfortable with discomfort, not mastering it, not transcending it, not achieving some Zen-like detachment from the messiness of being a human in transition, just becoming comfortable enough with the discomfort that it no longer has the power to send you running, just learning to sit with the fire without fleeing the room. The work is forgiving yourself, daily, hourly sometimes, for not being further along, for still fearing the things you thought you had conquered, for waking up some mornings and feeling as small as you ever were, as though the growth was a dream and you were back in the old room with the low ceiling, unable to stand up straight. The work is recognizing those mornings for what they are, not setbacks but echoes, and getting up anyway, making the next choice, taking the next step, expanding by another inch, even when every nerve in your body is begging you to contract. The work is not linear. It is not a straight line from small to big. It is a spiral. You pass through the same fears, the same doubts, the same old stories, again and again, but each time you pass through them, you are a little higher. Each time, the view is a little wider. Each time, the old narrative has a little less grip. You are not going in circles. You are ascending. It just doesn't look like it from the inside, and some days the work will feel pointless. Some days the progress will be invisible. Some days you will look at your life and see only the distance between where you are and where you want to be, and that distance will seem so vast, so uncrossable, so absurdly, cosmically unfair that you will want to lie down and simply stop. On those days, I want you to remember this: a tree does not see its own growth. It does not feel the rings accumulating, does not notice the slow, steady thickening of its trunk, does not register the incremental reach of its branches toward the light. From the inside, a tree is simply doing what a tree does, drawing water, reaching upward, standing in place. It is only from the outside, only with the perspective of years, that the growth becomes visible, that the sapling becomes the oak, that the thing which once seemed so fragile reveals itself to have been, all along, building something immovable. You are the tree, and the rings are forming. Even now, even today, even on the days when you feel most like giving up, especially on those days. I want to talk about anger, because you have some, and you have been told it is unacceptable, and that lie has cost you more than almost any other. You are angry. You are angry at the people who made you small. You are angry at the systems that rewarded your shrinking. You are angry at the years you lost, the opportunities you missed, the version of yourself you could have been if someone, anyone, had simply said, "You are allowed to be everything you are." And you have been taught to bury that anger, to smooth it over, to redirect it, to transmute it into something more palatable, sadness maybe, or self-improvement, or the quiet, grinding resignation that passes for maturity in a world that is terrified of women who rage, and men who weep, and anyone at all who feels things at their actual volume. But I am going to tell you something that no one has told you, and I want you to hear it like a bell ringing in an empty cathedral. Your anger is sacred, not because it is justified, though it is, not because it is righteous, though it often is, but because it is righteous, though it often is, but because it is yours. It is the only honest response to a dishonest situation. It is the part of you that always knew the deal was bad, that the contract was rigged, that the life you were being offered was a fraction of the life you were owed. Your anger is your integrity speaking, and you have been gagging it for years. I am not asking you to become your anger. I am not asking you to let it drive, to burn bridges indiscriminately, to use it as a weapon against the people around you. Anger that is only destructive is anger that has been denied too long. It is a dam breaking, and broken dams are not strategic, they are just wet. What I am asking is that you let it exist, that you stop treating it as a symptom of dysfunction and start recognizing it as evidence of health, that you sit with it, feel it fully, let it move through you like a wave rather than a wall. Because anger that is acknowledged loses its need to explode. Anger that is honored becomes fuel. And you, little wildfire, you are in desperate need of fuel. So be angry, be livid, be absolutely incandescent with rage at everything that was taken from you, every dream that was dismissed, every impulse that was corrected, every part of your nature that was labeled wrong and edited out. Feel it, all of it. Let it burn through you like a cleansing fire, and when the flames die down, and they will, look at what remains. Look at what is left standing after the anger has done its work. What is left standing is you, the real you, the you that existed before the edits, before the corrections, before the long and patient work of diminishment that the world performed on you with such skill and such persistence that you almost forgot there was anything underneath. But there was. There is. And now that the fire has cleared the underbrush, you can see it. Not clearly, not fully, not yet, but you can see it. The outline of something vast, the foundation of something that was always there, buried under years of accommodation and apology and the relentless, exhausting effort of being less than you are. That is what your anger was protecting. That is what it was guarding all along, not a wound but a treasure, not a scar but a seed. And now that you have finally allowed the fire, the seed can do what seeds have always done. It can grow. I want to talk about what bigness actually looks like, because you may have the wrong picture, and the wrong picture will lead you to the wrong destination. Bigness is not loudness, though it can be loud. Bigness is not fame, though it can be visible. Bigness is not pain, though it can be visible. Bigness is not domination, though it takes up space. Bigness is not the opposite of humility. It is the only context in which true humility becomes possible, because you cannot be genuinely humble about something you have never fully claimed. Bigness is alignment. That is all. It is the experience of living a life that matches your interior dimensions. It is the end of the chronic, low-grade dissonance that comes from being one thing on the inside and performing another thing on the outside. It is waking up and recognizing the person in the mirror, not with admiration necessarily, not with pride, but with recognition, with the simple, profound relief of seeing a face that matches the soul behind it. For some people, bigness looks like standing on a stage in front of thousands. For others, it looks like standing in a kitchen, cooking a meal for people they love, fully present, fully themselves, not performing comfort but being comfortable. For some it is building an empire, for others it is building a garden. The scale is irrelevant, the alignment is everything. You have been taught to measure bigness by external metrics, money, status, followers, applause, and those metrics are not meaningless, but they are not the thing. They are not the thing, they are the shadow on the wall. The thing itself is the light that casts the shadow, and the light is this. Am I being honest? Am I being whole? Am I occupying the full geography of my own life, or am I still huddled in one corner of it, pretending the rest of the house doesn't exist? Bigness is not about doing more, it is about being more. More present, more honest, more willing to feel what you actually feel rather than what you have been told you should feel, more committed to the terrifying, exhilarating, utterly unglamorous project of becoming yourself. And here is the beautiful, brutal truth: you do not have to earn it, you do not have to qualify for it, you do not have to complete a curriculum, pass a test, impress a board of judges. Bigness is your birthright. It was coded into you at the cellular level, written into the particular configuration of your atoms, embedded in the specific, unrepeatable pattern of your existence. You are already big. You have always been big. The work is not to become something new. The work is to stop pretending you are something less. I want to say something about time, because you feel like you've wasted it, and that feeling is a stone in your shoe that affects every step you take. You look back at the years of smallness, the years of dimming, accommodating, hiding, performing, and you feel a grief so sharp it takes your breath. All that time, all those years, all those versions of your life that you never got to live because you were too busy living the version someone else prescribed. And the grief curdles into regret, and the regret hardens into a kind of bitter, teeth-clenching fury at yourself. Why didn't I start sooner? Why didn't I see it sooner? Why did I waste so much of my one precious life being someone I was never meant to be? And I want to hold your face in my hands when I say this, because I need you to hear it in your bones. You did not waste a single day. Not one. Every day of your smallness was education. Every year of your dimming was research. Every moment you spent in the wrong life was data, vital, irreplaceable data about what the right life is not, and that data is the foundation of every good choice you will make from here forward. You could not have arrived to this moment, this specific moment of awakening, of readiness, of surrender, without every single day that preceded it, including the terrible ones, especially the terrible ones. The tree does not regret its years as a sapling. The river does not regret its time as a stream. The butterfly, that impossible, improbable, absurd creature, does not regret its days as a caterpillar, because the caterpillar was the butterfly. It was the butterfly in the only form it could take at that stage of its becoming, and to call that form a waste is to misunderstand the nature of transformation entirely. You were always becoming this. Every wrong turn was a necessary detour. Every dead end taught you something about the geography. Every failure was a surveyor's mark on the terrain of your life, and you needed all of them, every single one, to build the map that is now finally leading you home. So stop mourning the lost years. They are not lost, they are invested. They are the tuition you paid for the education that is allowing you, right now in this moment, to understand what you need and what you deserve and what you will no longer tolerate. And that education is priceless. That education is the foundation upon which everything will be built. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not running out of time. You are arriving precisely when you are always going to arrive, carrying precisely the wisdom you need, bearing precisely the scars that will make your next chapter not just possible but profound. And now, my dear, we arrive at the part of this that is hardest to say and hardest to hear, and it is this: the rest is up to you. I can give you words. I can give you fire and metaphor and the kind of truth that makes your chest ache with recognition. I can hold a mirror to your face and show you the outline of the giant you have been hiding, and I can tell you with absolute conviction that the giant is real and the hiding is over and the world is waiting, impatiently, desperately for you to stop crouching. But I cannot make you stand. That is yours to do. That is the one thing no voice, no book, no speech, no mentor, no guide can do for you. The standing up. The first step. The moment you go from knowing to doing, from understanding to action, from I should to I will to I am. And I know that the distance between knowing and doing feels like an ocean. I know that you have known for a long time, that awareness has not been your problem for years, that you could give a lecture on your own limitations with the fluency of a scholar who has spent a lifetime studying a single subject. You know, that was never the issue. The issue is that knowing is safe, and doing is not. The issue is that knowing allows you to feel like you are making progress without actually making progress. It is the illusion of movement, the treadmill of self-awareness, the comfortable lie that understanding your chains is the same as breaking them. It is not. Understanding your chains is necessary, but breaking them requires something beyond understanding. It requires the willingness to bleed, not metaphorically, or not only metaphorically. It requires the willingness to endure the real, tangible, physical discomfort of doing something your entire nervous system is screaming at you to avoid. It requires the willingness to disappoint people you love. It requires the willingness to be visible, to be judged, to be wrong in public, to fail spectacularly, to fall on your face in front of everyone who told you that you should have stayed small and safe and manageable. And I cannot want that for you more than you want it for yourself. I cannot carry you across the threshold. I can only stand on the other side and tell you what I see from here, and what I see from here is this. It is worth it. The discomfort is worth it. The loneliness is worth it. The fear and the grief and the guilt and the anger and the whole howling, harrowing, heart-splitting mess of becoming who you actually are. It is worth every single moment of agony. Because on the other side of it is a life you have never tasted, a life where you fit inside your own skin, a life where your voice matches your volume, your actions match your ambitions, your exterior finally reflects the vast, blazing, ungovernable interior that you have been concealing from the world since the day someone first told you to be less. That life is real. It exists. It is not a fantasy, not a motivational platitude, not a vision board affirmation. It is a concrete, tangible, livable reality that is available to you, right now, today, in this moment. Not because you have earned it, not because you have suffered enough, not because the universe has finally decided you deserve it, but because it was always yours. It was always there. The only thing between you and that life is the decision to stop standing at the threshold and walk through. So walk. Walk with trembling legs and a racing heart and tears streaming down your face, and every voice in your head screaming that you are not ready, that you are not enough, that you will fail, that you will be seen and found wanting and confirmed in every fear you have ever harbored about yourself. Walk anyway. Walk, because the only alternative is to stay where you are, and you already know what staying looks like. You have already lived the staying. You have already tasted every flavor of smallness, the bitterness of suppression, the numbness of conformity, the dull, grey ache of a life half-lived. You know that menu by heart, and it is not enough. It was never enough, and every cell in your body knows it, which is why you are here, which is why these words are landing like blows, which is why something inside you is breaking open right now. Not breaking apart, breaking open, like a shell that has been cracking for years and has finally reached the point of no return. So walk. Walk toward the version of yourself that you have been dreaming about since before you had language for the dream. Walk toward the life that makes you sick with longing and dizzy with terror and alive, so ferociously, unbearably, electrically alive that you can hardly breathe, electrically alive that you can hardly breathe. Walk because you are tired. Walk because you are angry. Walk because you are hungry, and the hunger has become louder than the fear. Walk because you were never, never meant to stay small. And one day, sooner than you think, you will look back at this moment, this trembling, tearful, world-splitting moment, and you will laugh. Not because it was easy, not because the journey was gentle, not because the cost was low, but because you will see, with the clarity that only hindsight can provide, that you were never in danger of failing. You were only ever in danger of never starting. And you started.